All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast. If you're enjoying our content, please make sure to like and subscribe. We appreciate all your support. But we're diving into another Players Era game, Michigan and San Diego State, late night game, 10:30. Cody, what are your initial thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, two teams that need to prove a lot, I think, in this game. Obviously, I mean, Michigan hasn't lost this year, but the narrative kind of feels like they've kind of dropped a couple games. They didn't really look good against either Wake Forest or TCU. Kind of had to battle back from some deficits in that game, and they struggled with ball security in those contests. And this is another game that you're going to be tested, and this is probably the best defense they've seen all year in San Diego State that has elite athletes at all five positions, and they deny the rim at a high level as well. So they're going to probably force Michigan into operating on the perimeter a little bit more often than they would like. So, guys like Elliot Cadeau and obviously Lendeborg with the ball in his hands are going to be tested in this game. Like Cadeau has a 30.1% turnover rate at this point in time, and it's kind of been an issue throughout his entire career, but it's come even more to the forefront this year than it did in his days at UNC. So that's definitely something to monitor. And on the San Diego State side, they're obviously coming off of that double overtime thrilling loss against Troy that they didn't really look particularly great on either end of the floor, and it was the defense that was a bit of a concern. They gave up over 50% inside the arc to Troy, and they gave up 12 threes as well. They didn't look like themselves on this end. I think they're definitely better than what they showed on last Tuesday night, but and they're getting Magoon Guath back for if this is going to be his second game. He played in that Troy game, but he didn't look. I don't know if he really looked 100%. He had that brace on his knee, wasn't moving around at like the normal level that he moves around. But ultimately, I think he's going to be fine. He's kind of just getting back into the swing of things. But this is also an offense that's going to be up against a really good interior defense of Michigan, and they're also going to force you to operate on the interior with their drop coverage. They do a nice job of running teams off the 3-point line, forcing you to operate in the mid-range and paint and into the shot blockers of Adai Merez Johnson, and even Lendeborg as well. So, guys like Miles Bird, BJ Davis, and others, and Sean Newman on the ball, and Reese Dixon Waters. Like, they have a lot of like on-ball scoring options. We just haven't seen them operate at a super efficient level yet, especially in the games that they've been tested a little bit. So both teams kind of need to prove things on both sides of the ball, but it's a game that I'm excited to watch regardless. You're muted.
Marcus, sorry.
That's all right. You could just
we'll test Marcus's editing skills. There's a bird going crazy.
Fair.
He's probably getting his cock sucked.
Probably.
Oh.
Bobbing for apples, baby. All right. Let me think how I want to transition here. All right. I'm not going to say anything to what Cody said. All right, Marcus, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, kind of how Cody kicked it off was the Elliot Cadeau turnover problems, and I think that could come to the forefront in this game a little bit. A San Diego State defense that likes to turn teams over, has success turning teams over, and a Michigan team dating back to last year. Now this year with Cadeau at the helm and not a ton of strong perimeter options, not a ton of on-ball talent on the perimeter. They've really struggled to take care of the basketball. They're 250th in turnover rate on the offensive end against like I said, a good San Diego State defense that turns teams over. So I think that's something to monitor. It's one big area where I think that San Diego State could put themselves in a position to win this game. But I think ultimately, anyway, my initial thought on this game is just that Michigan front court has been so dominant, right, on the glass. And particularly, I think there are avenues in this game for them to really be on the offensive glass at a high clip. This this San Diego State defensive rebounding unit hasn't been fantastic. 242nd in defensive rebound rate. They gave up, 17 offensive rebounds to Troy last week. And like, no disrespect to Troy, like they're a good team, but like, you got Mara, Johnson, and Lendeborg here. At Michigan, that's a different animal and a really deep front court group that's going to be all over the offensive glass, I think, in this matchup. So I think that's an area where, yes, of course, like, the Michigan offense, we wish they probably had more perimeter shooting, more perimeter options. But, this is a matchup where I think even, if Cadeau's, shooting shots from the outside, they're going to be able to get on the offensive glass, but one thing, Cody, that you mentioned that I think is really key, because this San Diego State team has shot the three very well. Granted, their rate, they don't shoot it at a high clip volume wise, but they're 21st in the country in 3-point percentage. But like you said, this is a Michigan defense that wants to funnel everything into their bigs, right, and make you shoot tough ones over guys like a Daimara and Morris Johnson and even Lendeborg, like you said. So I think that's going to be really key in this game, if they can, have success in doing so and let it all funnel to those big men in the paint. I think Michigan's defense sets up pretty well against this San Diego State team.
Yeah, some good points all around. I think both teams have quite a bit to prove so far this season. They may have struggled a bit. But Cody, what do the Aztecs have to do to come out of here with a win? What are their keys to the game?
Yeah, I mean, they need to find ways to generate offense through their dribble creation, I think, is kind of the biggest thing. They have a lot of options to do so, like I mentioned, with Miles Bird, who's probably shooting over his head a little bit. He's 7 for 15 from three this year after being like a 31% career 3-point shooter. So, I mean, he's obviously a great option. He's improved every year, but and they have other options here on this roster, like Reese Dixon-Waters, coming back from the injury that forced him to miss the entirety of last season, and he's looked solid so far. And other guys like Davis and Newman, like I mentioned, LZ Harrington, the freshman, has looked okay. I think he struggled in the game against Troy, but looked good in the other bye game competitions so far. So their dribble creators are going to have to operate probably in the mid-range at a high level, because like we've mentioned, Michigan likes to funnel things into that area, so they're going to have to be great there. And on the defensive side, their rim protection is going to have to hold up, and they're going to have to be good on the defensive glass and force turnovers against this Michigan team, which they absolutely can do because they have so many good wing defenders. They play heavy in the gaps, which can force this Michigan offense to force some poor decisions when they try to get into the paint. So ultimately, it's not a terrible matchup for their defense. It's just, keeping them off the glass. And like, ultimately, I don't think this is like a great matchup for Magoon Guath as a defender. He's more of a, positionless guy that can switch on to anybody. He's a great recovery defender, rim protector. But when he's guarding guys like a Daimara, Morez Johnson, and Lendeborg as a primary defender, I do think he's a little bit up against it physically and strength-wise. I think those guys can kind of take advantage of post-up situations against him. So he's going to have to stay out of foul trouble. He's also going to have to hit pick and pop threes at a pretty high level. He's going to have to force the bigs of a Daimara and Johnson to guard him out on the perimeter to open up some other things for this offense. So he's a pretty key piece in this game. I do think it's a rough matchup for him, but if he's able to prove me wrong and step up, I think San Diego State has a real chance to win this game.
Yeah, Michigan, definitely the pretty heavy favorite. I mean, 7.5-point favorite, but I completely agree with you. I think there's a way San Diego State comes out of here with a win. But Marcus, what does Michigan have to do to stop that from happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all the things that we've kind of talked about, getting on the offensive glass at a high clip, which I think they can, like we've talked about against this San Diego State defense that doesn't rebound the ball all that well. Limit turnovers against the San Diego State defense that forces a lot of them. Michigan struggled with that up to that point. So that's something I'm really going to need to see them prove in this game. Can they take care of the ball well enough, to put up points, right? And keep San Diego State out of transition, even though they want to play at a slower pace, right? I mean, if you keep turning the ball over, that's where you're going to get yourselves into trouble. And then on the defensive end, it's just funneling, like I said before, everything into Mara and Johnson. Making those guards that have shot it well from three. And like you said, I think they've maybe overperformed a little bit from behind the arc. Like they still are, they've shot it at 41%, through a few games now. So there's a sample size at least of a few games. So it's going to be important to run them off the line and funnel them into where, your defense is best. And that's on the interior. And then just take care of the glass, which, this Michigan team does very well. Obviously, San Diego State has success on the offensive glass as well. But, that with this Michigan front court and their defensive rebounding ability, I think they should be able to be fine and limit those opportunities. So, I think it sets up fairly well for Michigan. But like you said, there are definitely ways for San Diego State to put themselves in a position to win this game.
Yeah, definitely a good matchup. With that being said, transitioning to who we have winning this game, Cody, who's your pick for Michigan and San Diego State?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Michigan here. Like, I think San Diego State has paths to win this game, like we've mentioned, turning them over, getting out in transition and scoring that way. Like, they have viable on-ball scoring options to, score in the mid-range area against this Michigan defense. But I don't think this Michigan defense is talked about in regards to how good it actually is. Like, they've been an elite 2-point defense this year, and Dusty May has always been a really good defensive coach. And when you have 3 rim protectors that you can trust, and you add in these solid perimeter defenders and guys like Namari Burnett, Trey McKinney's a good defender, Rodney Gale's a really good defender as well, and LJ Kaysen, like they have a ton of athleticism across the board, even on the wings. So I do think they give San Diego State a hard enough time, and I think they control the glass really on both ends of the floor. So I do think Michigan wins this game, and a little bit of a grinder, because I do think both offenses are sort of up against it a little bit here. I'll say Michigan wins this 75-66.
All right, Marcus, let's hear it from you.
Yeah, I think Michigan wins as well. I just feel a lot more. I think they're just at a better point right now with their team, with the front court. Just that just stabilizes so much, particularly in this matchup. I think they can take care of the ball a little bit better. It's still a concern for me. It's why I think this game maybe ends up a little bit closer, but I think Michigan's front court ultimately wins out. I'm going to say Michigan wins this one by 6. I'm going to go 76-60.
I also have Michigan.
76-70. 70.
I also have Michigan. A bit of a bigger margin here, 79-68, but I just think Michigan handles San Diego State. But anything else we want to add?
I think we're good.
All right, wrapping it up here. As always, thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.